Lockdown, lockdown. This is an emergency alert. Please follow lockdown procedures. Go into the nearest room or building, lock the door, and turn off all lights.
This happened around freshman year in high school. This was around March of 2019. Nothing bad has happened since then. I came to school at around 7:25 a.m., and since I came early, I helped one of my teachers, I'll call Miss Villa. She was an awesome teacher, often described as the best teacher in my school, since she would often help out a lot of students within my school. Everything went normal for about an hour, until at around 8:27, when I heard the school alarm go off.
A lockdown has been initiated. Please follow your lockdown procedures.
At first I thought, what the fuck is going on? Since there hasn't been a school lockdown since 20 years. I just thought this was a drill, but it wasn't. The school principal announces, "This is a hard lockdown. Keep all doors closed." I felt very scared, but I tried to keep myself calm and said to myself that everything will be fine. Until I saw an old man around his late 40s holding a gun. He didn't see me or anything, but I started to freak out, thinking he was going to hurt other people around the school. I was with my teacher, so I felt somewhat safe since they called the authorities from my school. However, it didn't mean that I was 100% safe, as the man started yelling and started threatening teachers and students. The students and teachers were mostly inside the classroom, but I believe that the guy knew that they were hiding. As soon as I told my teacher to do something about it, I heard a gunshot. My heart dropped, and I was starting to panic. I heard someone scream, and I couldn't do anything about it since the guy was mostly armed, and my teachers couldn't do anything about it. Then, I heard another gunshot, and this time one of my teachers got a knife and started attacking the guy. She was successful in hurting him, but didn't really injure him 100%. She then started running away from the guy, and as she ran, the guy started running after her. He almost caught her but missed, since there was now a police force up in the 4th floor of the building. He tried running away through the other side of the hallway, but then got caught by security. He was later identified as a 45-year-old drug dealer and sex offender, and he somehow got past through school security. Chills went through my spine after hearing this, because how can he manage to get past through scanning without security even knowing? The only thing that really shocked me the most is who got shot, and knowing that it wasn't one of my teachers since no one else was in the hallway besides him. Nonetheless, I still don't want to know. Knowing that, it will only make things worse just by thinking about it. This took place 2 years ago, and I can still recall every moment in almost perfect detail. It was nearing the end of school, and everyone was on their way to their last period, which for me was history, a class that I not only wasn't good at, but I also disliked the teacher, and at that point, I honestly had no motivation for even showing up. So ultimately, I decided to ditch and hide out in one of the bathroom stalls located near the very back of the school. Almost no one went back there, so I figured no one would find out anyway. I was in the furthest back stall, playing some game on my phone, when the ear-deafening sound of the principal coming over the intercom made me jump. It was a lockdown announcement, though I honestly didn't pay it any attention, considering they were all practice, and so I just continued to sit there in the stall and wait. But just then, all the lights to the building seemingly shut off all at once. The hum of the light faded, along with the buzzing of the AC unit, which meant all the power to the school had been cut off. The bathroom had gone pitch black, and that's when I actually started to get worried. Power was never cut off during practice lockdown drills. I texted my friend asking him what was going on, and literally right away, he answered back with a text saying, "Dude, where are you? It's a real lockdown. Everyone's asking where you are." I told him I was in the bathroom, and he responds saying I should hide, but where else could I go? I wasn't just going to run out into the hallway to find a better spot, so ultimately, I chose to stay and hide in the stall I was in. I turned my phone brightness down and texted my friend again. I asked him what the reason was for the lockdown, and after 5 long minutes of waiting, he replied, saying that apparently there was a kid, armed with a knife, banging on classroom doors and asking to be let in. Both my classroom and the bathroom I was in were on the same floor, so I turned off my phone and tried to see if I could hear anything. There were running footsteps, and that was shortly followed by the sound of the bathroom door opening. I was absolutely horrified at what I was hearing. Whoever entered walked into the stall next to me, went inside and shut the door. I held my breath for what felt like forever. Then, to break the silence, in a shaky voice I said, "Who's in there?" It was silent for a second, and then I heard a voice reply with, "I'm just looking for a place to hide. I heard there was a lockdown over the speakers." That didn't really answer my question, but the guy sounded around my age, so I decided to just let it go. We sat in silence for what seemed like forever, when finally, we got another announcement telling all students to exit the school in an orderly fashion through the front doors, where cops would be waiting outside. I exited the stall, but was surprised to see the guy next to me didn't. I asked him if he was coming, and he replied saying, "Yeah man, just give me a couple minutes." I thought that was weird, but regardless, I left the bathroom and started heading towards the front exit of the school. As I was walking, my phone went off. My friend had texted me. He said that apparently, a kid who was maybe a couple years older than us tried to rob a nearby gas station at knife point, and the guy actually stabbed a couple of people, and when he was unsuccessful in getting any money, he went to hide in our school to blend in as one of the students. But what horrified me the most was the last sentence. My friend said that the cops outside were saying that the kid was still inside, and that he was hiding somewhere in the back of the school. Reading this changed my walk to the front doors into a full-on sprint. Right as I got outside, I would frantically inform one of the police officers of what I had experienced, and after they searched the bathroom, they found it was empty, but that the window inside was broken. The kid had broken and escaped through the window. Needless to say, for the next few school days, I'd gotten a lot of unwanted attention because of what I had experienced. As far as I know, that kid still hasn't been caught, and it's just still difficult for me to come to terms with the fact that I was unknowingly hiding in a stall right next to the guy I was trying to hide from. I was in my second year of high school. Every year our school is required to perform at least 2 lockdown drills, but our principal at the time would have us do more like 3 or 4, so I was pretty used to it. All the teachers would warn us ahead of time to save any panic. That morning, as I walked into my first class period, I was informed by my history teacher that the school would be having a lockdown drill that day. I actually kind of liked them, because it meant that we had less work to do, considering the 20 to 25 minutes they always take. 30 minutes into class, and a short buzzer went off, followed by our principal's voice on the intercom. Like every other drill, he explained how the school was going into lockdown, but that it was just a practice drill. He explained that should there be a real lockdown, their buzzer would sound for longer, and there would be no intercom announcement. Our teacher instructed all of us to shut the curtains and go into the corner of the classroom that was not visible from the outside door, then shut off the lights and lock the door. For the next few minutes, we sat in silence. Eventually, we heard footsteps outside. It was the principal outside trying every classroom door to make sure they were locked and that the classes were responding to the lockdown correctly. Before I knew it, the drill was over. The day progressed, and I was now sitting in my physics class, which was right after lunch. At some point, I ducked out of the class to use the bathroom. Now, our school building had a basement. Down there, they had a bathroom that was much more private and a lot less busy. There were a couple of classrooms down there, so it didn't look weird for me to go down there. I was sitting in one of the back stalls. I was the only one in there, which was usually the case. All of a sudden, I heard the lockdown buzzer start going off from outside in the hall. It sounded for about a full minute before it abruptly stopped. I waited for the principal's voice to come over the speakers, but it never did, which, like I mentioned earlier, was supposed to signify a real lockdown. At first, I didn't really think it was a real lockdown though. It happened too close to the practice lockdown earlier that morning. I thought it was just a second part of the drill, but as I sat there for a few more minutes, I started to realize that if that were the case, that probably would have been explained over the intercom. I started to panic, now thinking this was real. I wasn't safe in the bathroom as the door had no lock, so I ran outside to try and find a classroom. There wasn't much for options in that basement. It was also so hard to see now that they turned the hall lights off. But I did eventually find a classroom door. I tried the handle. It was locked. I looked in through the glass part of the door. In one of the corners, I could barely make out a kid hiding. There was a class inside. I banged on the door and explained that I was a student and was trying to hide. I got no response. I was both frustrated and terrified at the same time. I realized that protocol was to never let anyone inside no matter what. I was on my own. I thought about going back to the bathroom, but found an empty computer lab first and settled on that. I got under one of the back desks and for the second time that day, sat in silence, only this time for a real lockdown. 10 minutes went by, nothing. Not even an update over the intercom. Then, a heart-dropping sound of running footsteps from outside, coming down the basement stairs. I could hear the person's heavy breathing. It kept getting closer. It now sounded like it was just outside the room. I started adjusting my body position to try and duck down more to get further out of view, when a light turned on. It was the light to the computer on the desk above me waking up. I must have accidentally pulled the mouse cord. It wasn't that bright, but it was enough for me to make out a silhouette in the doorway to the room. I genuinely feared for my life in that moment. The person was just standing there. I prayed they wouldn't enter the room, and after what felt like an eternity, they turned and continued running down the hallway. A few minutes later, and the lockdown was over. The school tried to keep the incident silent, but it eventually got out. Apparently, a kid in my grade that I actually slightly knew stole his dad's gun and got in the school through a back door he left propped open earlier in the day. Police showed up to the school and detained him before any bullets were shot. They later searched his backpack and found a paper with a list of names on it, which they believe is who he meant to kill that day. Pictures of the list itself leaked. My name was number 4 on that list. I never heard if the kid just got scared and decided to not do anything, or if he just genuinely didn't find anyone after entering the building. Either way, I believe the person that I saw while hiding in the computer lab was him, and that I could have lost my life in that moment. Back in 2016, during the whole killer clown craze, A few clowns on Twitter threatened to come to our school at 11 a.m. and kill us. The school picked up on this and sent out emails to parents and planned a lockdown at 10:30. Sitting in our history class, I hear the familiar sound of a lockdown alarm. The teacher rushing to the window and door, locking and closing them. To be honest, I wasn't that worried. I thought that it was just another blank thread online, and nothing would happen, and my day would go back to being normal. But there is still an excitement to a lockdown. After 40 minutes of silence, sitting on the cold floor in the corner of the room, the emergency green flashing lights turned off, and the air conditioning slowly fell silent, and the hallway lights switched off. The school had cut power. Why though? At this point, me and my classmates were staring at each other. We all knew that something real was going on. After 10 minutes or so, we could all hear a faint banging noise from down the corridor, shortly followed by heavy and fast footsteps. Someone was running down the hallway. They started banging on the lockers and screaming, "I'll kill you all, just die!" At this point, a few girls started quietly crying. Then, the most terrifying thing ever happened. One of the men, dressed as a clown, ran up to my classroom door, banging and screaming. Multiple people were crying now. One of my friends whispered to me, "We're all gonna die." I started crying too. The man swiftly moved away from our door, and his screams slowly faded down the corridor. After another 2 hours, the principal came on the loudspeaker. Surprisingly, explaining everything, he said that just after 11, 2 men walked into the school, one holding a kitchen knife and a camera. They ran around the school, threatening to kill students, and once police raided the school, only caught one. No one was hurt. The school got over 20 buses to take the younger kids home, and the kids 9th grade and over, like me, were told to walk home in groups and call the police if we saw anything suspicious. I had a hard week at school, thinking that the second man would return with a gun or something, but nothing happened. This, nonetheless, will be scarred into my mind forever. The second one, as far as I know, has not yet been caught, but at this point, I feel like they are not looking for him, as it's been over a year, but the thought of him still planning an attack on the school has made me a lot more cautious when walking to school. Since then, the school has hired a few on-campus police officers and have installed some auto-locking features on doors and windows when the lockdown alarm goes off. This had me feel a little bit better in school, but this just isn't something that you can forget about. It stays around forever.